If I'm going to say that the Holocaust happened to people just like us, you say mean. What's it mean? Dark.
They had like the same emotions as us. Like they were sad, and they also had like moms, dads, brothers, and sisters just like us.
Yeah. Did they love them?
Yes.
All the time?
Probably.
Did they ever get mad at their mom?
Maybe.
So before I took Mr. Fred's class, I didn't know much about the Holocaust. I knew little from the grades before me, but I just knew that a lot of the Jewish people died because of the Nazis and because of their religion, but I didn't know much other than that.
No one to help. So being like us means you dream.
For me, and I learned this the hard way, it is absolutely essential that any educator who is stepping with their students into the Holocaust, that they understand why they would want to take their students there. This truly is allowing students to bear witness to humanity at its worst. And as I mentioned earlier, why would you want your students to know that? Why do you want your students to bear witness to all of the things that cloud humanity's promise in your classroom and then go home with that? So I think understanding your motivation, understanding the outcomes that can occur when you step into this history and journey is the place to start. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, which is recognized as an authority in Holocaust pedagogy, as well as Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial Authority of Israel in Jerusalem, both locations state that it's probably not a good idea to expose your students to the Holocaust as deeply as you might want to until they're in 8th grade. There are so many themes and people and books and experiences that students can venture into earlier, but in terms of truly exploring in great detail the Holocaust, we wait until about 8th grade. The reason for that is that although middle school students in general can be incredibly bright, we all have those incredibly gifted students that walk into our classrooms in 6th grade and in 7th grade. I have found, and I think anyone who teaches Holocaust history has found, that intellectual maturity doesn't necessarily dovetail with emotional maturity. The journey into the Holocaust isn't just an intellectual journey. Clearly, it's one that touches the emotions. And you have to make certain that the students are prepared to understand that the world can be this way and still emerge hopeful and optimistic from it. And the emotionality that's most often, or the maturity that creates that kind of emotionality is most often achievable right around 8th grade.
We used to believe in other things.
We focused on the difference, making them.
We often, human nature frequently calls us to focus on differences. We define ourselves by what makes us different at times. And you're saying that we create others just as a natural tendency.
Yes, sir.
So what calls us in? What calls us into family? What calls them into our heart? That's our next question, right? Really good. My students and I study how it is that we're driven to belong in groups, and how it is that we push each other away. We study the dynamic of othering. As we do that, we also step out into the world and bear witness to suffering in other locations and in our ability to counter that in what we do for and to one another. My students engage in service work throughout the community. They meet people who are vulnerable. They meet people who have been broken or marginalized, forgotten in some fashion. And so they're beginning to rehearse interfacing with the kind of pain that defines the Holocaust. More importantly, they're rehearsing and actually doing and coming to understand their capacity for generating the actions, the attitudes, the beliefs that counter the brokenness in this world.
What's at the core of that? Jayla.
They did the same things as us. Like every day they got up, they got ready.
Yeah.
They were bosses.
They brushed their hair. They had bosses.
And they were like spouses,
Yeah.
grandchildren, and sons and
Okay.
daughters.
Which makes them what?
They're human.
They're human. In what way? I mean, they're just like us.
There are a lot of things that you should and shouldn't do. That being said, there are things that should always be spotlighted at the beginning. The first thing is as we've spoken, you definitely need to know why you're doing this with your students. The second thing is you absolutely need to know what the Holocaust is yourself, and by that I mean, what is the definition? We understand that the definition is a systematic, bureaucratic, state-sponsored murder and persecution of 6 million Jewish men and women between the years 1933 and 1945 by the Nazis and their collaborators. It's a single sentence, but embedded in it is this universe of understandings that you're going to have to navigate through with your students. However, at the center of that definition is comprehending that this is a history that speaks to and is unique to our Jewish brothers and sisters. I think it's incredibly important to understand that the Holocaust is a history that concerns Judaism first and primarily. Many educators will use the term Holocaust to refer to any of the brutality that was created by the Nazis and any of the victims that fell into their terror between 1933 and 1945. But most historians recognize that the Holocaust with a capital H refers to a specific event and to specific people. It's incredibly important as well to make certain that the students understand that as they study this history, that the anti-Semitism that caused it, the hatred and indifference that is embedded in it, doesn't have bookmarks. Anti-Semitism didn't begin in 1933, and unfortunately the hatred that gave birth to it didn't end in 1945. It's vital that teachers educate their students, not just to be historians, but to understand that the dynamic that defined the Shoah is something that exists today, and that a Holocaust class be a place where students are being prepared to act in defiance of it today. I think it's also extremely important to understand that the Holocaust was created by people like you and me. The Holocaust, I think, when we first step into it, would be so much easier to understand if somehow there were sociopaths or psychopaths associated with it. Evil monsters probably seem more capable of generating what we understand as the Holocaust. But unfortunately, that's not the case. The Holocaust was created by people like you and I, who bit by bit, slowly, incrementally, allowed themselves to become capable of making the choices that created the terror and the brutality and the darkness that we know as the Holocaust. So teaching that allows students also to be forewarned about who they are and who they are becoming and how it is that they're defined by their choices.
It's important for students to learn about the Holocaust because they need to know what happened in order to prevent it from happening again, and to stop being indifferent from people who are in need, and to stop ignoring people and really put themselves in the community.
We look at the Pyramid of Hate put out by the Anti-Defamation League. It allows us to understand that great and horrible things that are done in the name of genocide or done in the name of the Holocaust that we're studying were done incrementally. There wasn't anything terrible almost that happened instantaneously. It's human nature to avoid great pain and to not generate it in others, although we can if we've been practicing it and rehearsing it in small bites. So we look at how it is that our choices define us, and that if we make small choices every day that allow us to become accustomed to the pain that others feel, that soon, after a period of time, the little bits of pain that we're allowing to exist can create something as dark as the Holocaust.
So, everyone says that it's our generation's responsibility to pass it on to our kids and make sure that they remember the Holocaust and it's never forgotten. But I think it's also important to prevent it from happening again. Just like I was saying, we could just as easily get on farther onto the Pyramid of Hate and get all the way up to the point that the Nazis got to. And it's not likely, but it could happen. And we need to stop that from happening.
There is a tendency in Holocaust classrooms, especially for new teachers, that they want to impart a passion and an emotionality to it. And in order to achieve that, they frequently create simulations. And the United States Holocaust Memorial, Yad Vashem, and so many other places that create pedagogical expectations for teachers all state, and all teachers who do this discover themselves, that you really shouldn't create any simulations whatsoever. There isn't anything that you can do in a classroom in which students pretend or imagine that they will fall into a knowledge of what actually happened. To not eat for a day and to attempt to pretend that this was what it was like to starve, or to stand in a square space in a classroom and to try to say that that's a gateway to being able to experience what it was like to be in a cattle car, really creates a fiction that doesn't serve our students, nor does it serve the memory of the victims and their survivors. I want them to come out of Holocaust history understanding their place in community. I want them to understand that their passion can be focused into compassion and justice and mercy. I want them to understand that speaking up is really important, that questioning authority is essential, and that I especially want them to leave feeling empowered to create changes, even if it's small changes in their lives. At the end of the day, that's how we honor the victims and the survivors of the Holocaust, is by attaching meaning to their lives today, even though there was a group of people who found that their lives had no meaning in the past.